City Clerk. Where's the Honorable City Clerk? President Perez, members of the board, all of you here tonight. It's great to be with you. Well, there was some big news last week, but it wasn't about me. It was about Jenny. Jenny graduated last year from one of our high schools, and she sent me an email last Thursday. And the title on the email was Small News that she sent me, but it was anything but small news. Her news was that she had just made Dean's List in her freshman year. It was outstanding, and I told her so. That it was a big deal. She made us proud. You want to have a great job, have your freshmen telling you they made Dean's List. Because God knows it didn't happen to boys. So you see, our city's future depends on kids like Jenny. Kids who can set goals and work hard. Kids who can grow up in safe neighborhoods. And kids who attend a school district that prepares them for work, happiness, and lifelong success. Jenny's success, the success of all our kids, is really a big deal. So tonight, while there are lots of things I might talk about, I want to spend time on just 4 things. Things that are important to Jenny and to all the other kids and families in our city. 4 things: our schools, our economy, safe neighborhoods, and the challenge of public budgets. So while we do so many other things that affect the lives of our residents, the work we do to impact our children's lives through our public schools is essential for them and for our city's future. And it is work that I intend to aggressively and completely pursue with you this year. New Haven School Change. School Change began in October 2009 with the ratification of a landmark teachers contract. Teachers in New Haven, the people who are in the classroom every day with our kids, help design the blueprint that challenges schools to embrace improvement plans that face their unique needs and the needs of student populations. School Change has been called out by President Obama, by Secretary Duncan. New Haven School Change was the basis for Connecticut's school reform last year. We are in the 3rd year of the implementation of New Haven School Change. 3 big goals: eliminate the achievement gap by raising test scores to the state average, cut the dropout rate in half, to make sure that every student is financially able and academically prepared to graduate from college. And the numbers in years 3 shows that we're well on our way to accomplishing each of these goals. Test results. Test results show New Haven closing the achievement gap with the rest of Connecticut, improving at rates in New Haven that are twice the state average. Just one example on a slide. This slide shows for reading proficiency the kind of dramatic improvement for 3 groups of 3rd graders is the same group went from 3rd to 6th, 3rd to 7th, and 3rd to 8th. They doubled their test scores over this period. These are the kinds of grades working together that will eliminate the achievement gap by year 8 of New Haven School Change. Second big goal: cut the dropout rate in half. Slide 2 shows the school district's graduation rate over the last 3 years. The graduation rate in those 3 years has gone up from 58% to 70.5%. A 10% gain last year, on top of a 10% gain the 2 years before. At the same time, the dropout rate has fallen from 32% to 21%. By year 5, School Change will have cut the dropout rate by half in New Haven. No other place in Connecticut can point to that kind of movement and success. And you're all in the neighborhoods, right? You're all in the neighborhoods. You know the difference in our neighborhoods if kids are in school learning, achieving, positively doing. They aren't then doing what? Harming themselves or one another. If our schools are doing their jobs, kids will not only achieve, but will have hope for the future and a vision of what is possible in the pursuit of their dreams. I understand we had a celebration for Hill House. Is that true? Great job. I want to call out our other high school. one with the biggest gain in the graduation rate of 2012. Is Wilbercross in the house? Third big goal, college. Okay, college, why are we always talking about college? Because this is about work, and that is where the work is today, in 2013. You know, you go back to 1990. In New Haven, in 1990, there were over 7,000 New Haveners working in manufacturing. In 2011, that number had dropped to 2,500. Think about it. From 7,000 to 2,500, a decline of 64% of jobs in manufacturing. Now, the good news is that we have more jobs today in New Haven than we had in 1990. But more and more of them require what? College degree. Here's a fact. If you look at all the job postings, what's open in Greater New Haven, of all the jobs that were being posted, 60% of them were in fact in New Haven. We have the majority of jobs. If you go a little further and look at those job requirements, of those job postings, 70% of them required what? Bachelor's degree or higher. See, the only question is whether our kids or someone else's kids are going to get those jobs. I'm for our kids, and that means college. But once we graduate the kids from high school, we need to be sure that they're prepared to succeed in college. Now, you all know about Promise, the money will be there. But once our kids get there, we have to be sure that they stay there and that they get through. So now what does the school district do? We track college success and ask why some kids seem to stick and some kids seem to not. So new challenge for New Haven school change is college persistence. We look at the first reform class that graduated 2 years ago, is in their second year of college. At the end of their freshman year, those that went to college, 62% were enrolled at the end of the first year, and only 46% at the end of the second year. All went, 62 completed the first year, 46 the second. Not good enough. But an interesting thing, Promise scholars, at the end of their first year, 85% of them are staying in college. Big difference from the rest of the kids. You see, Promise and College Summit, which is the college prep program, are not only writing checks, they're doing something very important. They're partnering with the staff in our schools to ensure that once our kids get into college, that they stay in college. They're partnering with the colleges now that the kids go to make sure that once they get to college, they stay there, and that they're ready to get the kinds of jobs that are out there. So school change goals for the next year. Portfolio schools, number 1. Each school will continue to be measured and ranked year after year. It's got to have an improvement plan that's tailored to meet the needs of the kids in that school. The lowest performing schools will be turnarounds. Among the highest performing schools, student achievement, are turnaround schools. Second, talent, 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 talent. Teachers and principals will be managed as professionals to encourage collaboration, empowerment, and responsibility for their students' outcomes. And third, the role of community and parents. Promise in the district will focus on earlier grades, but for post-high school, we need to work with parents on growing Boost, our non-academic supports into more schools, provide more parent university sessions. This September, we'll launch a trade school at the Gateway campus with Gateway. Trade school includes what? College, too. We're going to keep full pedal to the floor to continue the work, no matter what changes occur in the school district, no matter what the budget challenges we face, no matter what obstacles are in our place. I got to introduce you to 3 people. To Jordy, Priscilla, and Alyssa. Where are you guys? Stand up. Jordy. Priscilla, Mary, Matt.
University of New Haven.
Our East Sons partner. Priscilla grew up in what neighborhood, Priscilla?
Fairhaven.
Fairhaven. At Quinnipiac and studying?
Sociology.
Great. In Odessa?
New Haven, Connecticut.
And you want to speak up here too? You're at Southern. What was your GPA this past semester?
3.88.
And you get 3.88? This is why we do New Haven School Change. This is what we can do. This is to be the rule, not the exception in the city of New Haven. We do this right. There isn't anything else we can't do. Thank you guys for coming out tonight. You're extraordinary. Three big goals, or three strategies to accomplish it. Focus on post-high school work. We need to pay attention to the city's economy, jobs, and taxes. Now, New Haven, a state that isn't doing so well, remains vibrant. Three areas: healthcare, education, and high-tech businesses. Yale New Haven Hospital, by bed count, is now, in America, the fourth largest hospital in the nation. Now, these institutions, in turn, are creating other kinds of businesses. You know the big ones: Covidian, Alexion, Hire One. We're seeing that. Those three at the base, spinning out these other kinds of life bioscience and knowledge-based jobs. And together they produce what kinds of jobs? Service jobs, blue and white-collar service jobs. So even while job growth in the state has been flat, in New Haven we've been modestly growing. But we all know the problem. Unemployment is too high. We haven't connected, right, people to the work. The board's Jobs Pipeline Initiative is a great start and a great bridge to doing that. New Haven School Change, over the longer term, will prepare more and more of our kids for the work. We need to keep our eye on the ball on growing jobs and growing the skill levels and the connection between the people in the city to those jobs. Economic growth also does something else, though. What does it do? Provides tax revenue to the city budget to keep the mill rate down. The assessor reported the grand list last week. Strong growth, 1.8%, even in a tough economy. Interesting to look at the grand list. The top 10 taxpayers, all commercial entities, are growing disproportionately to the rest of the list. In other words, the big guys are growing faster. That's good. That's good if you're residential, and that's good if you're small business. And personal property is a sign of the strength of small business, is going up by nearly 50% over the last 5 years as a percent of the grand list. So as we continue to do more, I'd suggest a couple areas of attention for us together. We need the board to consider moving two pending matters: modification to the existing BD1 zoning to enable smart, mixed-use, scale-appropriate projects like the one at Chapel and Howe, which has been a vacant lot producing no jobs or taxes for my entire adult life. Second, adoption of a formal process to consider and approve tax agreements for housing and mixed-use projects. We need more affordable and workforce housing. Those two things are here. Also, look forward over the coming months. We'll start demolition of Route 34 in the next 6 weeks and begin 100 College Street in the middle of the year. Forest City at Science Park in Hallville will move forward. I'll be submitting a land disposition agreement that will transfer ownership and responsibility of the Schubert Theater out of the city's hands into the hands of a professional not-for-profit operator. We'll be sending 3 cooperation agreements with the Housing Authority for 190 units of housing over at Chatham, Eastview, Rivercroft, finally, and at Val-Macri. We'll be doing a food incubator at the former Gateway College commercial kitchen site, a great project. We'll be doing another land disposition agreement for the Route 34 right-of-way west end of the project on the block between Orchard and Sherman is ready to go. We'll be introducing an industrial development and capital infrastructure plan focused on the Mill River Industrial Park, creation of the Canal Dock Corporation to maintain and operate the soon-to-be-constructed deck and reconstruction of the Yale Boathouse in Long Wharf, and in conjunction with the Hill Alderman. I look forward by the end of the year coming together around a set of principles and a direction for Church Street South that respects the residents who live there, and Dolores, were she here, the large bedroom apartments there. Where's Dolores?
Behind the camera.
That's everything, Dolores, okay? Good. So for 100 College Street to the pop-up businesses downtown, we want to create jobs and keep the mill rate down. We have to be welcoming, continue to be encouraging to investment, to business developers and visitors. So let me turn to two areas that require our attention over and over again: public safety and public budgets. First, public safety. Slide 3 shows audited department on crime for a long period of time, going back to Mayor Daniels coming into office in 1990. You really see three periods here. 1990 to 2003 when it went down, then went up slightly in 2004 to 7, and since then when it's gone steadily down. Slide 4, the high profiles, homicides and shootings for the period of 1990 to 2012 as well. Things got better in 2012, but they need to get still better in 2013. How are we going to do that? Let's keep our focus in public safety. It's about violence reduction, building up, many of you requested, community policing. More than anything else, I hear that from our residents, that they want to see our police and they want us to keep a focus as violence, even as I know we've seen a rash of burglaries and holds up in the cities in the last 6 weeks. Second, we need to continue to hire. All the new hires do what? They walk beats. And to ensure police presence in the neighborhood, we need to keep hiring. Third, more and better training. Friday, we promoted 19 officers and detectives to the rank of sergeant. They're going to be the first students in the police department's new command college operated with the University of New Haven and Yale University. If you want to see a video of failure of street management, look at the recent video coming out of Bridgeport, and you understand what happens when you don't have bosses out on the street. And fourth, Project Longevity. Longevity is smart, it promotes partnership with the other law enforcement agencies, and it's consistent with the type of policing you can see the comp staff needs. I want to say a word about guns. I went to Washington twice in January. Largely, I went to inform the discussions about gun violence that America has been having since the tragedy in Newtown. And I've said this, I don't want to compare tragedies. All of these gun deaths are tragedies. But spree shooting in the suburbs with assault weapons is the least common kind of gun violence in America. In fact, and we all know this dearly, the more common kind of gun violence that kills far more Americans every year is almost always done with handguns, almost always occurs in poor neighborhoods, and almost always the victims are African Americans. Now that was the case for something I'll never forget. Is a new mayor 19 years ago yesterday at Ormont Court on Orchard Street when the 6-month baby, Danielle Tapp, was shot from a street gun battle, killed her, and entered her eye. It was also the case in Chicago last week when the 15-year-old, Adia Pendleton, who had just been performing for President Obama's inauguration, was killed by drug dealers in her neighborhood. This is a debate that we all have to have our voices as a community heard of. It is happening now. It is happening 40 miles away. We should respect and support the right to bear arms, but like all rights, it needs to be balanced with responsible rules for their use. This is the year to get that done. And finally, public budgets. Not going to give you a full report tonight, but as you know, 43% of the revenue in the city budget comes from the state of Connecticut. And you have heard me say more than a few times that when the state catches a cold, we get pneumonia. The state has a $1.4 billion cold this year. The governor's budget address is 2 days off. is Wednesday. So I'll hold a briefing the week of February 25th prior to my submission to the board of the FY 2014 budget. But I did want to make some observations tonight, some to the positive and some to the negative. As I said earlier, the grant list grew by $1.8 million, 1.8%, $90 million, roughly $3.3 million in new revenues, but a caution. Part of that growth comes from phasing of the 360 State Street project. We're in negotiations with the pension fund that owns the building. Our budget calculations will adjust accordingly, but it's growth. Second, the city received recommended contributions to the two city pension funds, city employees, police, and fire. SERV fund contribution next year will actually go down slightly. Credit goes to our employees in 884 and 287. This is happening because in SERV, we're moving to pension plans that taxpayers can afford, that reflect the current market, to protect longer-term employees, and it guarantees all employees that the funds will be there when we need them. Also to the good, healthcare costs are flattening out this year and going into next year. Again, credit new agreements and new ways of doing things. To the good, tax collections remain strong. Folks are paying their taxes. As I briefed both the Leadership and Finance Committee, the goal and the mission and the intent, as we expect to have a balanced budget this year. To the negative, we receive recommendations for the pension funds, for the other fund. Right now, police and fire fund is going to look like it's going to take several $1 million more to fund next year. That said, we have a tentative agreement with the police union. It is being voted on Wednesday. We remain in negotiations with fire. Either way, it's my intention that no matter, both these contracts will be settled in 2013. They need to be. Second, while the grant list has grown, it continues to shift to up, to tax exempt. It's both our strength and in some ways also our weakness, putting pressure on other taxpayers. Pilot continues from the state, fell this year, and we will see what it does next. Third, state aid generally. General Assembly Brendan Sharkey is predicting cuts in aids to cities and towns. Now, I don't know. Brendan is a friend, and of course he comes from Hamden. Interesting thing, Hamden. Do you know that 40% of Hamden's residents work in New Haven? More than twice as many as Hamden people who work in Hamden. Twice as many work here. Cuts in state aid are not going to help the state's economy. They're not going to help New Haven. They're not going to help places like Hamden. We've absorbed those cuts. We need to be prepared to advocate for what's right and what's fair and what's smart for our economy in the coming legislative session. So to do that, I'm aware of the burdens our taxpayers bear. I'll work hard to present a budget that preserves essential services, that keeps taxes no more than what's necessary, and that does the things that our residents demand. So there it is. School change, growing the economy, public safety, public budgets. There's lots more. Those are the four big things for us. Among these, if I were to pick one, nothing is more important than our work in improving the chances of our kids in our public schools. Each of you should get an email like I did this past Thursday from Jen. Finally, as I leave here tonight, I'm reminded of one other thing, that in pursuit of our efforts around school change, I'm going to urge, push, convince, wrestle, and cajole each and every one of you to get this work done. And I'm not going to wait for anyone else to do it. There are 330 days, 4 hours, and 7 minutes taxpayers have me left on their payroll. And I intend to earn my keep in this most inspiring of places, in a job that's really the best. God bless you. God bless our city. I look forward, as I always have,